Thank you.
Congressman Raskin, if I'm not mistaken, the next senator was a former member of the House Judiciary Committee.
Very much so. It's an honor to be here with Senator Schiff.
Senator Schiff, California.
Thank you, Chairman Durbin and Chairman Raskin, for putting this hearing together and for all your leadership on both of these important committees. I wanted to ask you all your thoughts on how the administration is handling the immigration issues. In LA and in California, we are the epicenter of the indiscriminate arrests, detentions, family separations, the militarization of the Guard, the Marine Corps, the deployment of law enforcement, or rather military for law enforcement purposes. There's so much to ask. Let me just start with one issue, and that is the ethnic profiling of people. They're grabbing people off the street. They're claiming they're looking for one person at times and just grabbing whoever they get. Other times they don't even know who they're arresting or detaining. Courts have ruled they're not allowed to profile in this way. We're having citizens and non-citizens alike who are being arrested because of their appearance. And yet it goes on, and it's going on every day. What can be done to enforce the court orders that have already said you can't just profile someone and arrest someone without probable cause or reasonable suspicion or any other basis apart from their ethnicity?
Well, we can take action in courts. As you know, the federal government is the government of limited powers. The states, all other than the 10th Amendment, are left to the states. And one of those federal powers, one of those federal responsibilities is in the area of immigration, but it's not unlimited. They cannot racially profile. They cannot use national dress language, things like that. As you said, there's plenty of court cases on this. And in the past, we have brought amicus briefs and other action to try to bolster the petitions of certain groups. I remember when I was on Trump 1, we actually filed an amicus when Trump tried to terminate TPS for Liberian immigrants because he had recently said those ugly remarks about, S-hole countries. So we're not without tools to stop the ethnic profiling, the racial profiling. And it is something that we meet on a regular basis. We talk about these things on a regular basis. And it's something that we certainly need to look at. What powers can AGs bring to stop the racial profiling? I think it's perfectly legitimate and something well within our ability to take a close look at. If I may, I just want to just note, Trump recently said that he was concerned because some of his big donors, their employees in the area of agriculture and hospitality, are being impacted by his policy. And so what he's really saying is that he might let these donors exploit workers unfairly and maybe not do his anti-immigrant thing against this particular set. And then he, of course, a few days later pulled back off of that. But the irrationality is what I'm talking about. It is inherently arbitrary. It's capricious. And, the federal government is not allowed to act in an arbitrary, capricious manner. It must act rationally based on thought and planning and fairness. And so thank you for raising these issues. There's something that all of us are deeply concerned about and will focus our attention on.
General Ellison, I appreciate it. And I think what we're seeing and what we need to combine our forces on is increasingly they're just ignoring the court orders. We're winning in court and they're just ignoring the court orders, and they feel in the same way they want to flood the zone with excrement in other areas, they flood the zone of violation of court orders. And by the time you go back to court and back to court and back to court, they've continued to arrest and detain people on the basis of their appearance. Let me turn to a related concern, and that is they're making some of these arrests in courthouses. This seems to be part of their new modus operandi. Of course, immigrants are more likely to be witnesses in those courthouses than defendants. But what are you seeing happen? Are you seeing immigrants not willing to come and testify in criminal cases anymore because they have fear that they might get detained? And what's more, what are attorneys recommending to clients that have immigration appointments? we had this horribly heartbreaking case, which is just one of many, of a Californian who went to an immigration proceeding with his son, showed up the way he's supposed to, and is arrested and then deported away from his son. And then his son is also deported. But what do attorneys now recommend to their clients? Can attorneys show up in lieu of their client to make the appearance? Or how are people supposed to handle the conflicting obligations to show up for a court appearance with the fear that that court appearance is going to be abused to arrest and detain and deport them?
Well, the courts we have most influence on are state courts, and we've been urging we've been raising this issue that witnesses, defendants, victims simply won't show up to court. We have seen people express tremendous fear about this. We've seen some of the sectors where there are mercados or other sort of ethnic groceries where people simply aren't going there anymore. We've seen schools that have a lot of immigrant children not show up for school. One of the things that we're advocating for with our state courts now is to have more video hearings so that people can have some sense that they can be heard without having fear that ICE is going to show up and take this action or other. And recently they have changed. Historically, there has been this idea that sensitive areas are places where ICE should not be there because they could interfere with the administration of justice. Well, the administration has crossed that out. So we are in a tough situation when it comes to this, but I think there are things we can do. Video hearings are one thing that I know that we're talking about in Minnesota.
Chairman, can I ask one last follow-up question?
Sure, if you can make it quick. Okay, Congressman Gertz has been very patient here, so please.
Will you indulge your old colleague? The Court of Appeals in the Ninth Circuit recently rendered the term "through the governor" superfluous when it comes to nationalizing the Guard over the opposition of the governor. And the issue of the use of the Marine Corps to detain or participate in any way in law enforcement is being challenged in court. We suspect this playbook is going to be repeated in your states as well. What preparations are you making for the potential activation, mobilization of your guards over the opposition of your governor and over the opposition of law enforcement in your states?
Well, obviously, I disagree with the interpretation of the Ninth Circuit with regards to basically rendering the governor's power of having the power to consent to the activation of the Guard in our respective states. I've been in touch with our governor with regards to our preparation in the state of Illinois. Unfortunately, the Trump administration has politicized his prioritization of states that are being targeted for aggressive immigration enforcement based on party affiliation, not on general immigration policy. We continue to try to litigate the best we can. And if I could touch on your prior question for a moment, I think there's limitation in what we can do by way of the courts. And I, as Attorney General, I have to acknowledge that. And I have a young daughter who is a rising 3L, and I've asked her to pay attention to the words of Chief Justice Roberts as he spoke to Georgetown law students and cautioned them that the rule of law is under threat and that we need to enhance our civics education. I think what the Chief Justice was talking about is that, yes, we've had some successes, that we have had some successes in the courts, but we're not going to be able to achieve everything in the courts, and we've got to educate the public at large as to our Constitution, the basics of our Constitution, not make constitutional scholars out of them, but understand the basics such that the people can speak and resist a president who says he doesn't know whether or not he has to follow the Constitution.
Mr. Chairman, I know we're a little over time, but if I may, Senator, if there is one thing that converts a society from a free society to an authoritarian society, it is use of the military against the population for dissent. This thing in California has me sleepless, quite honestly, and I just want to point out that deference to a executive, when that executive is not bound by common norms of law and decency, is essentially unleashing military rule on a society. And I really, I mean, I've heard that in California they are going to raise this issue higher to the next level. We don't know what'll happen there, but I'm telling you, if there's one thing that will cause irrevocable harm to American democracy, it is the military turn against American citizens, and all under the rubric of public order, when both the governor and the mayor of the city are saying, we really don't need your help at all. That's undisputed. They don't need, LA doesn't need Donald Trump's help. I'll stop right there.
Thank you, General Ellison. Senator Schiff?
I was just going to say, General, I totally agree with you, but it would have been nice if the Chief Justice thought about that before he gave the President of the United States immunity to commit criminal acts while in office.